Jeff the Killer, a creepypasta story in English. Chapter 1, The First Drawing. It all started when I was a little kid. My parents bought me a set of crayons and a stack of paper, and I spent hours drawing pictures of my family, my pets, and the world around me. But one day, I drew something different. It was a picture of a dark, shadowy figure with long, spindly arms and legs. It had no face, but I could feel its eyes boring into me as I drew it. As soon as I finished the drawing, I felt a chill run down my spine. It was like the figure had come to life on the paper, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching me. That night, I had a terrible nightmare. I was being chased by the shadowy figure through a dark, twisting maze, its long arms reaching out to grab me. I woke up screaming, drenched in sweat. But that was only the beginning. Every time I drew the figure, I had the same nightmare. And every time, the figure seemed to get closer and closer to catching me. I tried to stop drawing it, but I couldn't. It was like the figure was calling to me, begging me to bring it to life on the page. And then, one day, I realized the truth. The figure wasn't just a drawing. It was a creature, a malevolent spirit that had attached itself to me through my art. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't stop drawing the figure, but I knew that it was only a matter of time before it broke free from the page and came after me in the real world. Chapter 2, The Haunting. As I grew older, the shadowy figure continued to haunt me. I would catch glimpses of it out of the corner of my eye, lurking in the shadows of my room or peeking out from behind trees when I was outside. It seemed to have a life of its own, moving and shifting in the darkness, always just out of reach. I could feel its cold, bony fingers brushing against my skin, even when there was no one there. And then, one night, I woke up to find the figure standing at the foot of my bed. It was taller than I remembered, its spindly limbs stretching out to touch the ceiling. I tried to scream, but my voice was caught in my throat. The figure leaned in close, its empty face hovering just inches from mine. And then, it spoke. Its voice was like the whisper of the wind through the trees, barely audible but somehow filling the room. "Draw my life," it said. "Bring me into the world." I wanted to refuse, to scream and run away. But something inside me, some dark, twisted part of my soul, knew that I couldn't. I picked up my pencil and began to draw. And as I drew, the figure grew more and more solid, its form taking shape on the page. I could feel its power growing, its hunger for life and energy growing stronger with each stroke of my pencil. When I finished the drawing, the figure stepped off the page and into the real world. It stood before me, towering over me like a giant. Its eyes were empty voids, but I could feel them watching me, hungry and malicious. And then, it reached out and touched me, its cold fingers wrapping around my throat. I could feel its power draining the life out of me, sucking away my energy and vitality. I knew then that I was trapped, caught in the clutches of the shadowy figure that had haunted me all my life. I had brought it into the world, and now it was going to use me to sustain itself, drawing on my life force to feed its hunger. Chapter 3, The Bargain. I was desperate to escape the shadowy figure's grasp, but I didn't know how. Every time I tried to resist it, it would drain more of my energy and grow stronger. But then, one day, I had an idea. What if I could strike a bargain with it? What if I could give it something else to feed on, something that wasn't me? I spent weeks researching ancient rituals and spells, scouring libraries and online forums for anything that could help me. And finally, I found what I was looking for. It was a complicated ritual, involving candles, salt, and a special incantation. I spent hours gathering the ingredients and preparing everything, my heart racing with excitement and fear. When the moment finally came, I lit the candles and began to chant the incantation. The air around me grew thick and heavy, and I could feel the shadowy figure's presence growing stronger. But I didn't falter. I kept chanting, kept focusing all my energy on the ritual. And then, something incredible happened. The figure began to change. Its form grew less defined, its edges becoming fuzzy and indistinct. And then, it began to shrink, its arms and legs retracting until it was just a small, dark ball on the page. I reached out and touched it, and felt a surge of energy rush through me. The shadowy figure was still alive, but it was no longer a threat to me. It was trapped on the page, contained by the power of the ritual. But then, a new thought occurred to me. If the shadowy figure was no longer a threat to me, could I use it to my advantage? Could I harness its power for my own purposes? I began to experiment, drawing other creatures and spirits and testing the limits of the ritual's power. And with each success, I felt my own energy growing stronger, my abilities as an artist and a magician growing more powerful. But I knew that I had to be careful. The power of the ritual was not without its risks, and I had to be sure that I knew what I was doing. But as long as I had the shadowy figure under my control, I knew that I was capable of anything. Chapter 4: The Price. At first, everything seemed perfect. I had gained control over the shadowy figure and discovered a new world of power and possibilities. But as time passed, I began to notice a change within myself. I became more distant from my friends and family, more obsessed with my art and magic. I stopped eating and sleeping regularly, pouring all my energy into my creations. And then, the nightmares began. I dreamed of dark forests and twisted creatures, of shadowy figures creeping up on me from every direction. I dreamed of being trapped, of being suffocated by an unseen force. But the worst part was the voice. It was a low, hissing whisper that spoke directly into my mind, urging me to keep going, to keep pushing the boundaries of what was possible. I tried to ignore it at first, but it grew more insistent with each passing day. And then, one night, I woke up to find that the shadowy figure was no longer contained within the pages of my sketchbook. It had taken on a new form, one that was even more twisted and malevolent than before. It moved through my apartment like a dark mist, whispering to me in that same insidious voice. It told me that I had made a mistake, that I had given it too much power. It told me that I had to pay the price for my ambition. At first, I tried to resist it. I drew other creatures, other spirits, hoping to contain its power once again. But nothing worked. The shadowy figure was too strong, too determined to break free. And so, I made a decision. I would give it what it wanted. I would pay the price. I spent the next few days drawing and painting, pouring all my energy and creativity into a single piece of art. It was a portrait of the shadowy figure, twisted and deformed, but unmistakably powerful. And then, I performed the ritual once again. This time, I offered the portrait to the shadowy figure, as a gift and a sacrifice. It took the portrait, absorbing its power and energy with a hungry, desperate greed. And then, it vanished, leaving me alone in my apartment. But I knew that it wasn't really gone. It was out there, somewhere, waiting for me to slip up, waiting for me to give it another opportunity to take control. And I knew that I was never truly free. I had paid the price for my ambition, and now, I would have to live with the consequences. More horror. More scary stories. Just click on the subscribe button. Do it now.